Welcome back, Sebastian here. So, Formula 2 sprint race for the Spanish round. So pretty exciting race, I thought. So let's get right into it. So all drivers were starting on the wet tires to start because of course it was raining. Cordillo was on pole and Crawford was P2. Of course, this is reverse grid. So they basically reversed the top 10 from qualifying. That will be the grid for tomorrow's race. It was a rolling start because of the wet conditions. Lap 1, Vesti tries to get an overtake around the outside of turn 2, around the outside of turn 1, but he gets a bit of contact with Crawford and he goes down the escape road. Crawford would later retire from that because of that contact with a broken suspension. So unfortunate for him. Pourchaire gets a position at turn 5, had a little bit of contact with Iwasa. That was investigated, but no further action there. Fittipaldi goes very wide at turn 10. Lap 2, Crawford was in the pits with the broken suspension from said contact. And Vesti takes the lead going into turn 10 because Cordillo effectively went very, very wide into that corner. Lap 4, Martins overtakes Cordillo for P2 down the inside of turn 1, so good move there. And Vesti is starting to drive away off into the distance, setting the fastest lap of the race. Lap 5, Benavides was in the gravel, but he continued. Lap 6, Hauger was complaining about lack of grip from the rear tires, how they were eating up the rear tires too much. Lap 7, I noted that there had been very few overtakes to this point in the race. I think the drivers were having a hard time sticking close to each other, and because traditionally when you have a wet track, where the rain is like very light or where it stopped falling, usually there will be a wet racing line, and then going off of that line will lead to a very, very low grip condition. So it can be very hard to overtake in those conditions. And there was basically a train was starting to form behind Cordillo, who is one of the slower drivers in the points paying position at this point. Lap 8, Iwasa gets an overtake on Fittipaldi at P9, for P9 at turn 4, going down the inside, so a good move there by Iwasa. And then at this point, this is when the Pourchaire-Iwasa incident was under investigation, but like I said before, no investigation necessary, which I think was the right call. It was very minor contact, and Pourchaire didn't really drift too far to the outside of the track to make that contact. I think he was kind of holding his line. I think it was just a little unfortunate that Iwasa basically tried to cut a little bit too aggressively to the inside, I think. Although that being said, I think it's very close to a 50-50. Lap 10, Hauger comes on the rear radio again, saying that he has 0 rears, but still doing a fine job, I thought. Lap 11, Pourchaire overtakes Doohan at turn 10, down the inside, but the battle continues all the way through turns 11 and 12, where Pourchaire has to hold out around the outside, so really good move there by Pourchaire. And Doohan was seeming to struggle quite a bit, and he was like lacking grip in general. Novalak overtook Maini for turn 1 at P12. Turn 1 for P12. Cordillo goes off track at turn 5, and it looks like he drops to P6. Maini wants to switch for slicks. Some parts of the track at this point were quite dry, like the hill up at turn 12, one of the higher elevation points on the track. It looked like you could have had slicks, but a few corners before turn 10, it was still very wet, and you could see the water on the track and the spray at that point. So it's very, very tricky and very hard to judge the conditions. In lap 15, drivers were starting to search for the wet line, trying to keep the temperature down in the tires, because once you start overheating the wet tires too much, they really start to lose grip, and it's really hard to lower that temperature as the track dries out. Let's see, so Stanek was spun after contact with Cordillo. I think it was an error on Stanek's part, to be honest. I think he had room on the outside of the corner in turn 1. He should have stayed a bit more on that side and not cut across too aggressively after making the move. And at this point, right after this is where drivers start to try to go for a move for slick tires. Let's see, so lap 16, Maini still wants to switch onto the soft tire, onto the dry tires, and he's told on the radio that there's around a 4-second cutoff between the pace that the cars are doing now and the pace that they need to be doing to be faster on the slick tires. Next, that same lap though, Darula pits for slick tires from I think about 13th or 14th place. It's a very low risk move given that he's already outside the points, and there's only really positive benefits. Miney and Maloney also come in that lap as well. Lap 18, there was a 5-second penalty for Cordial for track limits. So a bit of a really, even though he started on pole, it's been a very scruffy race, I thought, for Cordial. Let's see, so at this point, Daruvula, even though he was on the slick tires, he was losing time to Benavides. So right after he pit, it was about 17 seconds between him and Benavides, who was the slowest driver on the wet tires, but after one lap, it was 20 seconds. So he lost about 3 seconds at one lap, just trying to warm up the tires. Cordial to Boschung was 30 seconds at one point after Benavides pit, and Novalak and Nissany pit as well. And a lot of drivers at the points were gambling now on the slick tires and hoping to get them to work. Lap 19, Daruvula sets the fastest lap. So at this point, we're probably the tire to be on now. However, unfortunately for all the drivers that had pit and were gaining tons and tons of time on the drying track, Correa beaches himself at turn 2, and VSC is called. So really unfortunate for all the drivers that took the gamble to go out early. All of that pace that they would have had over the teams and drivers on the wet tires was basically negated by the VSC, which of course is one of the risks as well. One of the risks as well when pitting early is that, you know, someone will have a moment and it will lead to a virtual safety car or a full safety car. At this point, Pourchaire pits as well, and Vershoor does too, with 6 laps left. I thought it was a bit risky because at this point, you're never really sure how many laps you're going to have left. And I thought it was a bit of a gamble for Pourchaire, given that he was in 4th place at this point. Lap 21, full safety car called, so given that the car was beached, probably should have been a full safety car from the beginning, and might gamble on more. So a lot of cars were starting to come in, but now you have to start gambling on how many green flag laps you're going to have left, and it's kind of difficult to tell. Because from track to track, sometimes recovering a vehicle, especially if it's beached and the gravel not really close to an exit, it can take 4 to 5 laps sometimes, depending on the track. Pourchaire, and then at this point, with the full safety car, all the drivers basically came in. The remaining drivers came in to switch to dry tires, which unfortunately kind of ruined the kind of fun and of seeing all the variations in strategy from lap to lap play out. After that, Pourchaire was still in 4th, but Vershoor, pitting a lap earlier, manages to move up to 6th. And like I said before, it was really unfortunate, I thought, for the early pitters, who I think if there hadn't been a VSC or a safety car, they may have been able to work their way up into the lower points paying position just because of the time delta. Lap 23, safety car ends with effectively a 3-lap sprint. Daruvula is basically under investigation for a VSC infringement, not sure what that was. Lap 24, Pourchaire was close to the back of Hauger, and he gets a move down Hauger for P3 at turn 1, right after the safety car comes in. And in that same lap, Pourchaire is on a mission. He overtakes Martins for P2 at turn 4. So extremely good pace from Pourchaire early on. I kind of wonder if maybe having that extra lap to come in to warm the tires up to get them into the working window would to help as well. It's possible. At that point, it became a timed race. So there's really, instead of 3 laps left, we only had 2 laps of action. And, 3 laps of action. Cordial was under investigation for failing to serve the penalty that he got earlier, the 5-second penalty for track limits. So he'll probably get an extra 10-second penalty for that. Final lap comes up. Vesti takes a checkered flag, and while that happens, it was a yellow flag in sector 2 and 3, which was, let's see, what was that? That was Nissany going for an extremely ambitious move on Daruvula. I don't think he was ever going to make that corner at turn 10, and they basically both go off into the gravel and don't really finish. But I believe they're still classified because it was the last lap. So I would expect a grid penalty coming Nissany's way for the next race. So final order from the Spanish Formula 2 sprint race for Spain. Vesti first, Pourchaire second, Martins third, Hauger fourth, Duen fifth, Vershoor 6th, Behrman 7th, Iwasa 8th, so those are the points paying positions. Leclerc 9th, Fittipaldi 10th, Novalak 11th, 12th Hadjar, 13th Stanek, 14th Maloney, 15th Benavides, 16th Boschung, 17th Cordial. Really rough weekend for him, like I said. 18th Miney, 19th Daruvula, and 20th is Nissany. Your 2 retirements are Cordial, who of course beats the car, and Crawford, who had that broken suspension from lap 1. So your championship standings after the Formula 2 sprint race are Vesti still leads the championship with 99 points, Pourchaire second with 93 points, Iwasa third 70 points. Fourth, long way down, is Hauger with 53 points. Fifth is Miney with 49. Sixth is for sure also with 49. Seventh is Maloney with 48. Eighth is Behrman with 45. Ninth is Dorivala with 40. 10th is Leclerc with 34. 11th is Boschung with 33. 12th is Doohan with 32. 13th is Fittipaldi with 31. 14th is Martins with 30. 15th is Crawford with 24 points. 16th is Hatchar with 18. 17th Stanek, 18th with 7 points. 18th Cordio with 5 points. 19th Novalak with 2 points. And then 20th, 21st, and 22nd, all with 0 points, are Nissany, Cordio, and Benavides. So honestly, overall, pretty good race, I thought. Not fantastic, but I think given that it was wet and it seemed that the track was very difficult to overtake, I'm not surprised by the lack of overtakes. I also kind of was hoping, I think the strategic element of switching to dry tires as the track was drying out was unfortunately kind of ruined by that VSC and safety car. It meant that, especially for the drivers, especially those in the point paying position, there wasn't really that much strategy in terms of which lap to pit. So as a result, there was very little change in the running order before the pit stops and after the pit stops. But that's all. I mean, again, unfortunately, I was very busy yesterday, last night, so I didn't have time to watch the sprint race live. Of course, I'll be watching. However, I will be watching feature race live and of course the Spanish Grand Prix live as well. So those reviews will be up right after the race as normal. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you again later. Goodbye.